What depth of field gives us the most cinematic image? Most filmmakers think that having that blurry background is what gives an image that cinematic look. That can be true, but that's not always the case. If you actually look at images from your favorite films, you'll see that they do have a combination of a shallow depth of field and a deep depth of field. So if you're always shooting at f2.8, f1.8, then you're not taking full advantage of your cinematography. So in this video, I'll be breaking down how filmmakers approach depth of field when crafting their image and how you can use it creatively in your projects. Hi, my name is Bruno Pozo. I'm a full-time commercial filmmaker here in Bend, Oregon, and I make weekly tutorials on filmmaking technique, gear, and how to make money with your camera. If any of that interests you, hit that like and subscribe. Let's start with a little bit of background so we're all on the same page. What is depth of field? Depth of field is a measure of how much of a scene is in focus. So a deep depth of field means that the image, all the way from the closest parts of the camera to the farthest parts of the camera, are in focus, while a shallow depth of field means that only a small part of the image is in focus, like the shot you're looking at right now. So what controls our depth of field? That's actually going to be our camera lens's aperture. This is also the f number that you see on the camera lens, like f1.8, f2.8, and so on. So the smaller the f number, the shallower the depth of field. The way I like to think about it, the smaller the number, the less is in focus, while the bigger the number, the more is in focus. And the secondary effect of the aperture is controlling how much light comes onto the sensor. As you can imagine, the bigger the entrance, so f1.8, the more light can enter the sensor and the brighter the image. While an aperture of f4 or f8 creates a smaller hole to the camera, meaning there's less light, making the image darker. And the common trap that filmmakers fall into is that they want to shoot at that fast aperture like f1.8 all the time so that they can capture that creamy background effect. I was guilty of this at the start of my career. When we bought our first 50mm f1.8 lens, we pretty much shot everything at f1.8. But the problem with that is that you lose the intentionality and the shots all start to look the same. So how do filmmakers actually approach depth of field? It all comes down to how you want to control what your audience actually looks at in your scene. A famous example of deep depth of focus comes from Citizen Kane. In this shot, having a deep depth of field allows us to actually explore the frame and all the different components in it, such as the character in the foreground having this conversation, the character in the midground who's bearing witness to it and also giving some more context to the scene, and our child in the deep background who you can see is playing, oblivious to what is going on inside the house. If this were shot as a shallow depth of field, you would only be able to focus on one of these three components, meaning that the filmmaker would have to decide what is important for the audience to pay attention to. But by allowing a deep depth of focus, you allow the audience to actually explore the whole image and take in all the details that the filmmaker put in the shot. And this can create a much richer experience because the audience gets to see all the different layers of storytelling happening. And the opposite is true when you have a shallow depth of field. In this example from The Host, a character is trying to escape from this hospital, and we focus on them in this very crowded scene, but because the shallow depth of field, we're not confused about where the character is, and the camera does this amazing rack focus to a nurse who notices the character running away, and then racks back our focus to the character, and we see their reaction to being caught. By using the shallow depth of field, the filmmaker controls exactly where the audience's eyes go to, and it removes any potential distractions in the scene, which would be all the other characters in this hallway. So the framework is very simple. What do you want your audience to focus on in this scene? A shallow depth of field is really great when you want to control where your audience is looking and you want them to focus on one thing. You'll see this a lot where they have the focus on a character's reaction, and when they look off to an object, the camera will actually rack focus to that object, allowing the audience to see what the character sees. Another great use for a shallow depth of field is when you don't really want to see what's going on in the background. I think this is especially true when you're doing documentary work or something where you don't have a lot of production design and you're not able to actually create a set that looks aesthetically pleasing. It might just be easier to hide it altogether and focus on the story, which is what is the character doing. And one of my favorite and creative ways to use a shallow depth of field is to actually show a character's state of mind. You'll see this when a character is maybe drunk or on some sort of drug or maybe having a strong emotional reaction. They'll cut to a point of view shot where it's very shallow depth of field, and they might even be racking focus kind of back and forth as the character is losing consciousness. So depending on the intent of your scene, having a shallow depth of field can be very cinematic. So when might we use a deep depth of field? If you spent a lot of time actually set designing, creating costumes, doing all this work to create a world in your scene, then it might actually be worth capturing a deep depth of focus. A great example of this actually comes from Poor Things. They spent so much time on the set design and world building in this movie that it would have been a shame if they had such a shallow depth of field for every single shot. So you'll see that a lot of the shots in this film are in deep focus so you can actually take in the world and appreciate all the set design and costumes that they made. Another great use is when you're in a beautiful location like on vacation somewhere in Hawaii, Paris, Europe, Asia, whatever. Instead of having a shallow depth of field where you basically could be anywhere in the world and you really can't tell what's in the background, having that deep focus allows you to take in the magnificent glory of your location. I do this especially for like establishing shots when I'm shooting a wedding, or like I said, when I'm on vacation in a beautiful setting. I am pretty much living at like f8 most of the time because I want the whole scene to be in focus so you can remember the beautiful landscape as it was. Another great use for a deep depth of field is when you're capturing a group of people and you need all of them to be in focus. So in like a wedding example, when you have a group shot where the family's all together, you may want the aperture to be a little bit deeper so you can actually capture everyone's emotions. This is exactly what they did in that shot in Citizen Kane. I know I just threw a lot at you, so let's do a quick recap. Number one, depth of field is a measure of how much of a scene is in sharp focus. Depending on the depth of field you choose, you control where the audience looks. So when might you use a deep depth of field? One, in an establishing shot where you want to show off the location. Two, when you want to show off the set design of your world and all the costumes in it. Three, when there is a group of characters that you want to capture and make sure the audience can see all their reactions. And when might you use a shallow depth of field? One, when you want the audience to focus on a specific detail in the scene. Two, to hide potentially an ugly background. And number three, when you want to show off a character's state of mind. Hopefully this gives you an idea of why you don't always need to be shooting at f2.8 or f1.8. And in fact, it might even be better to shoot at something like f5.6 or f11. And if you can master this, you'll be ahead of so many other filmmakers who fall into that shallow depth of field trap. But what do you think? Let me know how you approach depth of field in your storytelling in the comment section below. If you enjoy these breakdown of filmmaking techniques, then check out my playlist here where I cover more techniques that can help level you up. Thank you so much for watching all the way until the end. I appreciate every single one of you who do, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.